to today. So I want to tell you a bit about how I came up with this idea for this book, The Creative Lawyer. Because it says something about the lives that lawyers lead. And there are two stories, both of them are more or less accurate. The first story is that in January 2001, I was in Paris. I was alone. I was in this kind of sticky bar. I thought that people were being really mean to me and unfriendly. The reason I was there is that I had left law a few years before. I'd started an internet company. It had completely blown up on all fronts. It was over. So I was back in New York. A recession had already started. I had no idea what I really wanted to do with my life since I'd used up all my great ideas. I didn't have any savings left because I'd spent it on this ill-fated internet company. And I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do next, so I decided to take a quick mental health break to Paris, where I found myself in this kind of lonely place. And I remember standing against the wall, and I thought to myself, I should write a self-help book for lawyers, and I will call it The Creative Lawyer. So that's kind of the genesis. It took me about 6 to 7 years to figure out what I actually meant by that and what I wanted to do with it, but it was a kind of a vision that popped out somewhere. The other story about why I came up with this book is that I'd gone to law school myself. I went to Stanford Law School, where I did a joint degree. I also went to business school, so I was there for a long time. And I actually thought pretty hard before I went to law school about why I was doing it. I'd worked for 4 years. I'd taken time off. I wasn't just walking right into it. And yet, by the time I graduated, I didn't have what I would call a strategic plan for my career. I showed up, and I just sort of thought things would figure themselves out. And they kind of did, but kind of didn't. I also ended up at a firm, which is a very nice firm by New York standards. I worked at Davis Polk for a few years. And what I was surprised about was how unhappy the people around me seemed. All the more so because they had actually gone to many of the top schools in the country. They had excellent pedigrees. And not only had they gone to, say, Harvard Law School and been on a law review, but they had done things like soloed at Carnegie Hall and been Ironman athletes and played musical instruments really well and traveled the world, and yet they felt completely powerless to have any control over their career. And the descriptions they would give me of what was wrong with law were very broad brush. Oh, it's all boring. Or, you know, the people who become partners in law firms are weird and selfish. Or the economics of law firms are set up to just squeeze the blood out of the associates so you can never be happy. Or when my father or grandfather was a lawyer back in the day, it was a good job, but now it's not. And even though law wasn't exactly what I thought it would be, I found that these explanations were not a very robust description of why so many lawyers were unhappy. And though I'm basically an optimistic person, many lawyers are unhappy. Law is actually the #1 least satisfied profession. Anybody know what the #2 profession is for lack of satisfaction? Oh, I heard doctors, but dentists, that sounds right to me. I was just talking to a doctor actually who said, "You mean we're not #1? So they may be gaining on us. But you know, the funny thing is with all of these the professions is that lawyers are among the top 1 to 2% educated portion of the population. Every lawyer has gone to 7 years of higher education. And the same can be true of certain other types of professions. So how is it that this group of people felt so disempowered to actually do anything about it? And that is kind of what I thought about. What was really true about what they were describing and what was not true. And I had some advantages in the sense that I'd had other careers before, and I've had other careers since then, and I've also worked with a lot of people over the years. And one thing I discovered is that many of the problems that lawyers face are actually quite similar to what people face in other careers. Pyramid-like hierarchies where the people at the top squeeze money, well, that's most professional services. Demanding clients who work your last nerve and drive you crazy, that's also professional services. Going into a job at a very young age without having an awareness of what it is, well, many other academically based tracks are like that. So what I came up with was what I call the thinking like a lawyer problem. And the thing about law is that the thing about coaching in my book, there are about 13 to 14 chapters, which are basically individual methods of trying to make progress based on what's important to you. Most of that is common to a lot of positive psychology, coaching, other types of inquiries. It's not my kind of totally original intellectual capital, although I portrayed it, I adapted it to a certain population. But the one thing that I did come up with, I felt that was my own, was this, what I call the thinking like a lawyer problem. And what I decided is that the profession of law doesn't constrain people's potential, but the training and practice of law may constrain their way of thinking about their potential. And I think this has a lot to do with how we are trained to think as lawyers and how we might naturally approach things. So my recollection is that thinking like a lawyer has a lot to do with what we used to call issue spotting in law school. So if you spot issues, you're identifying potential problems. It's what gets you good grades on exams. You look for evidence, you cast a skeptical eye, you compare facts with rules, you take a step back, you anticipate potential problems, you wonder what's not really adding up. And when I do presentations like this, I can actually feel some of the audience members doing that to me, where they're kind of looking at what I'm saying and doing, oh, well, let me check this file, where did that go to, and does this really add up, and does this apply to me? And this is actually a very useful practice if you are writing a will for somebody, because I want to keep those ungrateful brats from inheriting my limited fortune. Or if you're planning a merger, or if you're representing a client, or if you're preparing your own client's case for court to figure out what might go wrong. That's what you want a lawyer to do. But the problem is that thinking like a lawyer and issue spotting is deadly when it comes to your own career and life planning. And the reason is this: career evolution is not a logical process. It's a zigzag journey. It relies on experimentation more than facts, and you cannot think your way through it. In addition, all of the best ideas that you will have in life, I'm pretty sure about this, don't start out as brilliant certainties. They don't start out as known things. Instead, they start out as little green tendrils, the possibility. Hey, maybe one day I'll write this book called The Creative Lawyer. I don't know who will read it, I don't know what will be in it, but there's something in it there that speaks to me. Or, gee, maybe I'll one day go on a trip around the world and spend 6 months in Bali. I don't know how I'm actually going to do that or how I'm going to afford it, but it's some kind of idea. Or, gee, my child is 4 years old and seems to have this talent for mimicry and imitating people. I wonder if he or she will one day be an actor or want to pursue that kind of thing. It's a very early kind of thing. And the problem that we can do as lawyers, and many other professions have this, is that as soon as a good idea comes up, a tendril, an inkling, an intuition, we shine this 10,000 volt or watt light onto it and kill it. Because there's always a reason why something won't work. There's always, you can think of many reasons to dispute what I'm going to talk about for most of this presentation. But the fact is that some of them will work if they're given nurturing